Sure. I'm Dr. Brian Shaw, and I am a former chairman of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. I served there for about 12 years, just 11.5 years, and served in that role to oversee the state's environmental policies and regulations across the state. And so I'm very familiar with the process that the TCQ uses to ensure protectiveness of the environment and help with the regulations that they have, especially as they pertain to the oil and gas production that we're talking about tonight. And I'm a consultant now, and I work with TotalEnergies and help them as they navigate trying to make continuous improvements in their environmental activities, as well as helping to communicate some of the great things that are happening and innovations that are occurring to continue to improve our environmental quality of our state. So it's good to be with you tonight, and I can be of use and answer some questions. I hope that'll be able to happen.
Okay, great, thank you. And we can see you now too. For a couple minutes until I share my screen again. All right, there we go. Minimize him for right now. All right, so we've talked about the forum and objectives, recognized and introduced everyone. And we're going to start into, one of the questions that you guys asked was about the fault lines, if you could get a map of the fault lines. And we checked with our geology department, and that's proprietary information with some data licensing. So there's a couple websites. If you want to go check out publicly, you might be able to find the information that you're looking for in your area from one of those two public websites. All right, one question, I believe, Mike, I think you were the one that asked this about where the laterals ran?
No.
No, maybe it wasn't you. You did, okay. All right, this shows where the laterals are running, the two new wells off the Folsom Path.
I did actually. Yeah.
I thought so.
So,
Anybody have any questions on this?
what am I looking
The Folsom Pad is right here,
at? So they're both going,
both go north. On northwest.
So why can't you drill them from the south, coming from the Colby unit where that was originally drilled from, which is zoned for industrial right there? It's in the middle of warehouses.
Dustin, do you want to,
Yeah,
I think we responded to this.
So, yeah, I think after you asked that question, so we did take that up with our engineering team, and they're not able to reach as far, and so they can't get to everything, and so technically, these were the only two wells to reach the undrilled acreage.
Well, just drill the Colby from there. You did it before. You drilled the Colby from.
You can see the lateral
I tried
section
JBC.
actually in the north, that's where the Colby unit ends. So there's a spacing restriction as well as can where you actually get that far. And so that's what it was, technically.
You can also see the lateral lines of existing wells up there.
Yeah.
You can't cross existing wells, right? So that's how to develop the acreage fully.
Yeah, so to the north is what's been undrilled, and that's the least acreage that we have to reach for these two wells.
But we're not on the Colby unit. We're on Folsom.
Right. And this is.
So you didn't get our contractual consent to consolidate those wells for the production sharing agreement.
What's drilled there is for active leases.
Yeah, but you're not understanding my question. That's okay. Thank you.
So again, Railroad Commission has approved those permits as is.
And there were some questions last time about royalties. I think someone had mentioned that the checks had stopped, and also they were asking about getting monthly checks versus quarterly checks. And we did check with the royalty department, the owner relations department, and it's based on dollar amount. So it's up to, the minimum is $100, and then once the royalties reach $100, then the checks are cut. You do have the right to call and ask for a lower dollar amount. I believe 25 is the minimum they'll change it to. And this is our owner relations department. This is also on our website, which is teepbarnett.net.gov. Sorry, TotalEnergies.com. I'll get it right here in a second. And they can help you out with anything to do with your mineral rights.
Real quick, back to the lines, so since there's nothing, no surface streets, is that like under Bowie High School kind of thing, the one on the left? Is that what that is?
This, the Colby 2H?
I don't see, I mean, we didn't, the high school is not marked there, but I mean, if it's within the mineral boundary there, then yes. I mean, it would be pulling those minerals.
I mean, it's just north of Green Oaks.
Okay. I mean, if they're leased to us, then they'd be in the unit.
So our neighborhood gets all the impact, while the other neighborhoods get the royalties.
Well, we would get royalties
Yeah,
too.
Well, I mean, but they don't get the impact, we get the impact.
There's-
The health impacts, the noise, the smells, all of that, the vibrations,
But then again, we get royalties from Rocking Horse, and so it's kind of,
we don't. You do? We don't.
yeah. I assume that's where the royalties coming from, because the royalties stopped and then they did Rocking Horse and they started again.
Yeah, everybody in this unit is leased, you know, is a royalty, we get the royalties, so.
How do you do this? Would you explain how you do those calculations? Because how do you know which gas is coming out of the Fulton leasehold and which gas is coming out of the Colby? There's no way to know that. How do you do
It's
the
within
calculations and
the
measure?
mineral boundaries of the leased acreage. So each individual, like lease, you know, if it's a quarter acre lot or half acre lot, it's all depending on where the lease is assigned that's within that mineral boundary.
Okay, so what, I'd like to see, one of the, lease agreements from Colby. So is their lease the same as ours?
Every lease, you know, the same as has its own clauses, you know.
And
So
this sounds like a real legal mess to me.
No, it's not. Everything is
These are-
perfectly legal. We can assure you that
Yeah,
it is.
These have been, again, vetted, it's a valid lease
Well,
within the mineral
It
boundary.
hasn't been decided in the court yet.
Well, that's not a topic we're gonna get into tonight. We're gonna focus on these questions that were asked.
Question was asked, where are the two laterals going? They're going to the north, in the undrilled acreage that's leased.
Okay, we're gonna move on if anybody doesn't have any additional questions. And once again, this is the number. If you have anything regarding your own mineral rights, the Owner Relations Department can answer that question for you.
You go back.
Would you go back to that?
Sure. Okay, question came up, I think, Linda, you had asked about the sound. This is actually in the permit package as well. This is the sound levels that we have to stay within.
Okay. And do you know what those what it's comparable to? Like 61 decibels in a 24-hour average? That's 61.1, I'm assuming those are decibels, yes? And what is that comparable to? What is that noise level comparable to?
It's really not.
That's all set based on our ambient.
Yeah, it's based on an ambient reading, and Judy, they wanna kind of chime in?
Yeah, so they take a 3-day survey right there, and you can see that, the 62.3, the 60.3, and the 61.4, that is like daily traffic and everything in the area. That is your normal, noise.
I understand.
I know what
that.
yes.
What I'm getting at
Thank
is,
you.
okay, if you've got a lawnmower that is,
Yeah, I just pulled that up because
Okay.
that's the kind of stuff that makes sense, right?
yeah,
So a vacuum cleaner has 75 decibels. A vacuum cleaner is that level. Your normal conversations are in the range of 60 to 70. Let's see, chainsaw at 3 feet would be 110 decibels. A jet engine at 100 feet away is 140 decibels. So you don't really, according to this chart, pain would begin somewhere over 100. So anything below that is really kind of normal. They've even got a nice little one here. I'm gonna save this chart, and keep it at the office. It's a good one. Business office would be like 60, 65. A suburban area at night is 40.
Where's it measured from? What Standing on it or
For this
down the
one?
street? Well, no, the data
Oh,
here
that one.
is, what's the protocol for taking a decibel
The
level?
sound testing,
Yes, ma'am. Well, you don't have to know exactly, I just mean roughly, is it across the street or is it?
No,
standing
it's
on
on
the
the
street?
site. Yeah,
Okay.
they have sensors that get put around on the pad site in different locations, and it monitors that way.
Okay, so by the time it gets to us, it should.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't want to say.
Yeah.
So if it exceeds that decibel level at one of these homes that's 600.1 feet away, then it's a problem.
Yeah, and we would never get past that. Plus, we put up all the sound walls that are supposed to block everything, and I think we've increased the height of those. I don't
You had asked us if we would be willing to put 40-foot sound walls, and we did go back and talk to management. As long as they're available and we can get them, yes, we will put them up.
You know, I have somebody that's living by the Truman site, and like, they're describing the sound level as a freight train, and it's continuous. And I know this because, you know, when they were fracking at the Folsom site, it literally would sound like a helicopter was over my house continually all day. That is unacceptable. Like, see, that's another problem, because you cannot do this activity quietly. And the other problem I see with this is you're not measuring low frequency noise, and that's the killer. That's really bad. There's no even mention of that.
We do measure low frequency noise. It's in the permit as well.
Well, that is what kept us awake for, 3 weeks on end. You don't wanna be around me when I'm sleep deprived if you think I'm hostile now. I'm seriously, because like, we weren't able to sleep. And I know people that live at Bruder. I've been talking to them, that rig us up now, they can't sleep at night.
Well,
I mean,
and
they
we
hear it
monitor,
continually, all day, all night.
and I think the city of Arlington can attest to this. We monitor daily and we adjust daily as needed. And we've taken a lot of steps at the Brooder to make sure that we're within
I
compliance.
know people that live there and they hear it continually. It's a disruption to their lives. So how can you assure us that that's not going to happen here? Of course it is gonna happen. It's an industrial activity. Come on.
Yeah.
No, it's not the same.
There's noise coming from the traffic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well-
That's defined by the ordinance. We're gonna have the higher sound walls, and then even within there, you know, we're gonna be monitoring daily and, you know, adjust things as needed, but that's, I guess, defined within the ordinance, and we haven't been able to do that, so, we wanna go to the next slide?
Yeah.
You just said you were gonna have the higher sound wall, she said if available.
Well, yeah,
How do we know if it's gonna be available?
Well, we're taking the steps to order in
Try to
advance
secure-
to make sure before we drill that we've secured them prior to that.
Before you drill, they will be
Correct.
secure.
We
Correct.
would, I assume, assuming this is a concession you guys are willing to make, we would want it to be, whether you drill or not. be
On
contingent
contingent.
on- If you can't get tall wall, don't drill.
Well, and we can even ask that that's put in
Well,
to,
I'm just trying to, you know, work out a reasonable.
As a
thing, but
condition.
You say, yeah, we'll do that, if we can get it, well. how
Julie,
high-
if I remember correctly, ordinance, there is no ordinance that says we have to have a certain height of sound wall. It's just we have to stay within certain
Well,
decibels of
I thought
sound.
you were
Yeah.
suggesting you were gonna take to the extra height more as a goodwill gesture. We have people who
Correct.
have concerns. There is the normal operating procedure, and these folks have all had trauma for events that happened outside of the normal operating procedure. So if you just go forward with assuming everything is gonna be normal, then there's no danger at all. No one should even be here.
And that's the steps that we're taking in advance to order those in advance to make sure we have them. Obviously, we can't control a third party if something were to come up, but we are gonna do everything in our power to take those steps early enough that we do have them.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How is the allowable sound level, what's its relevance to the sample? Is it a
As far
ratio
as
or-
how many decibels higher the threshold?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so they're asking like during drilling or during completions from the ambient, how much higher are we allowed for ordinance?
It's calculated right there, what is it, 5?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
This is bad for our neighborhood because it's by highway, so as it is, you're gonna be able to operate at a louder noise level, and at night, it is just, yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna be able to live in my house, like, where do we go? Help us here, I can't live in my house when this is going on.
well, that's true, and since they drilled previously, we've had noise walls put up because of the increased traffic noise for the extension of 360. And so when they did the noise, I don't know, studies to put the walls up, you know, we had decibel levels and that sort of thing that they said, you know, wouldn't be over this. And so now that on top of this that's big.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And at 1 decibel doesn't seem like a lot, but it is a lot incremental.
And I'll have to go back and pull the noise studies from the 360 extension when they were deciding what areas were going to get the noise barrier walls and see what they anticipated those decibels to be.
So we're not sure about how the calculation is.
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah.
And that's.
Yeah, it's 3 and 5.
Yeah.
So 3 during drilling, 3 extra, and then 5 during
That's a
completion.
lot. That is, wow.
Cost.
Day and night.
Day and night, okay.
That's
And then
unacceptable.
Franklin's gonna be seven.
That's
Seven,
a-
Once we get to 2027.
How long are they planning for this to go on if it happens? And how many hours of the day, night will we be hearing this stuff?
So it's 2 planned wells, and the time was,
2 to 3 weeks for drilling, and 3 to 4 months, I believe, was the last presentation we had for the completing.
Well, a regular well is 21 days on average. You're consolidating these leaseholds. These leases are monster. These are monster.
Ma'am, with all due respect, our engineers are the ones that set the times, and we have different technology now than when these were drilled originally. So our engineers are the experts in telling us how long it's gonna take to drill these
And how
wells.
long has that rooter rig been up? Because I've been going by there for weeks and weeks and weeks, and every week it's still up.
We'll be happy to answer that question afterwards. We're gonna focus on the Folsom right now. This is the point of this presentation, is to focus on the Folsom.
Would you just come back and say what you said prior to Jane's comment?
Sure, 2 to 3 weeks for drilling, and we're doing both wells back to back, and 3 to 4 months for completion.
And how many months?
3 to 4 months for completion.
I thought you had shown 30.
yeah, it's, yeah.
Did I am I giving the wrong? Sorry, that's my
30
fault.
30 to 40 days for the drilling of the 2 wells, so those are 2 consecutive wells, 30 to 40 days.
And well timing is dependent upon well length, right?
Yeah.
Right. So different lengths of wells take different time to complete, right? So your 21-day average could be dependent upon how long is that well, right? Arlington's a deeper formation, that's part of it. So it does take a little bit longer. That's just part of Arlington, where it is. So the longer the wells, we do the best we can. Our ROP, rate of penetration, is as quick as we can get, right? So we're not trying to sit here and waste time sitting on location. That's not the intention. The intention is to get on and off as quickly as possible.
And how many gallons of water will you use during this 3 to 4 month completion?
The completion will be 3 to 4 weeks, it won't be 3 to 4 months.
Okay,
Yeah.
so how many gallons of water?
Depends on the number of stages.
Yeah, I don't have information.
I had to bring the other presentation with me.
Because I
Hang
have
on one
read
second.
that it's like 15 to 16 million gallons of water. And I question that because it's like in the summer, they don't want us to turn our sprinkler systems on.
That's right. They don't.
You know, and, that was a real
So-
concern when I was reading about all those millions of gallons of water. And
Not only the water, it's permanently removed from the hydrologic cycle forever and ever, because they have to inject it. Once you inject it, it's not.
Water's purchased, just as you would from your residential house. I mean, water's purchased domestically
But man,
from the
to
city.
your question, we track the water, right? Our city of Arlington knows, we have meters on location. That's all public record that we get. I mean, it's out.
It's
We
all
also
purchased
track
just
one
as
out
you
there.
would from your own residence.
Yeah, I mean, but we do fall under certain restrictions with water at times, so all of that's regulated through the city. So. Is there a frac pond?
There is, we've got a
Yeah,
frac
so-
pond on
So the
site.
frac pond, right, so the frac pond, there, it's so
It's a
scary.
freshwater
It's
source.
a
It's,
frac-
yeah, so it's just freshwater pond.
We never put anything in the
No, it's
frac
not.
pond. It's all fresh water. It's the only reason we have it on location.
No, it's not,
We call it
it's not.
rate,
It's
we call
not.
it rate, city water.
I didn't say it was in the
So
pond.
what we do is we basically build in an area,
You guys are all flooding.
fresh
I
water
can't
from
hear
the
him.
hydrants.
Yeah.
Dusty, I can't hear what he's saying.
We were talking about the fresh water, right? Frac ponds and dirty water. That's all fresh water coming straight from the city. Right?
From the where?
From the city, from the city hydrants. Nothing ever goes into that pond. We don't put anything into that pond, right? The reason that is there is because we pump at a rate and we need a large amount of water at one time. This isn't a continuous pumping, right? We go in stages, that's why we go different stages along the island. Each stage requires a different amount of water, all set by our completion system. So that's why it's not a continuous take water. It's take water, fill the pond, use that water. Take water, fill the pond. So we try to do that on low peak hours, overnight. We have people that sit there and monitor that too. So,
How big is that pond? How much is that water in that pond?
I need to check, I mean, it's probably, 60 to 70,000 barrels, I would think. It's a fair amount, but I can check. Okay, do we wanna continue? with-
Yeah, I was pulling up the other presentation and,
On the timing?
yeah.
Barrels about 50 gallons or more.
It's 42 gallons.
Okay, sorry, then my apologies, I did it at the wrong time. Drilling is approximately 30 to 40 days and completion is approximately 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So overall,
Now, that's 24/7, right?
Drilling is 24/7 and then completions is daytime only.
You're that's torture, right? That's really not fair, because we deserve to be able to sleep. That is the very least, right? I mean, I think everybody here in this room would agree with me, who lives in that
I can
neighborhood.
sleep anywhere. I hear what you're saying, I just, personally, I fall asleep. If I don't get good night, I'll catch up at work. I'm working home, so.
sorry, my presentation is doing something weird here, just give me 1 second. Dr. Shaw, we still got you there? Okay, moving on to operations. A few questions have been asked at the last meeting. If operations is there every day checking the site, what are they doing? Can operations be available to answer our questions? We've got Brent here. And then there was a question about an explanation of a hissing sound approximately 10 years ago when Chesapeake was the operator prior to us. So Brent, do you want to kind of explain a little bit about your operators and how they monitor the site on a daily basis?
Yeah.
You can stand up if you want.
Do you have a question?
Go ahead.
No, I mean, so operators, I oversee a large group. We have mechanics, we have lease operators. We also have what's called INE, so our information electrical group. So we monitor everything 24/7 through SCADA, right? Every pad on City of Arlington.
Can you tell them what SCADA is?
Yeah, so sorry. SCADA is self-contained automated data analysis, right? Big word for we pull in a bunch of data, right? We have a bunch of sensors, we pull in about 1.4 million points of data throughout our entire location. We're pulling every 15 minutes, pressures, flow rates, temperatures, production status, separator pressures, wellhead pressures, surface casing pressures, tank levels. We monitor a ton of stuff. City of Arlington specifically has cameras, right? It's part of the city permit is 24/7 monitoring cameras. All of that feeds our security system, security center. On a daily basis, so I have, like I said, I have different groups. The mechanics take care of gas lift injection, which is a form of artificial lift, but most of the time they're coming out there, they're doing either inspection, maintenance, or production optimization, right? Those are the three things. No different than any other industry. You have maintenance, Here's a valve, we've gotta fix it, right? We have sight glasses that we monitor our fluid levels. They're dirty, we clean them. So it's the maintenance piece of it's, pretty standard throughout the industry, across the entire field. The inspection, biggest thing for inspection for us is typically monitoring the security of the pad. Have we had anybody break in? Have we had vandalism? Have we had any trash blowing from construction, off-sites? Do a lot of inspections. Then obviously production optimization, looking for how do we improve, right? A lot of that can be done through the SCADA system. A lot of it's done on site as we adjust the valve, we check pressures, and we see how everything's going. So that's kind of the main thing my lease operators are doing. Most of that's monitored through SCADA, through our automation system. So, yes.
Could you, I'm asking, I think for the group, hypothesize about the last meeting we had, this lady and a couple of other ladies that had, we'll politely call unfortunate events around the last operator. And I keep seeing you guys refer to, oh, that was them. They were stupid, maybe even suggest, but they were the state of the art. They gave a presentation very similar to what you guys are doing, saying that we got this. And then we had some ladies, I found it incredible, just the emotion in their voice. They weren't making that crap up. They were physically harmed. Can you hypothesize about what you think happened? Could that happen again? Do they have valid concerns, or is it yes?
I don't know which, is it the
It's
first
actually in the staff report.
Is it the, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Last meeting, I know the lady and another lady whose name escapes me right now, but I know. And I generally know them from the neighborhood, so I find them credible. And then when they stood to say that one of them said that she was gassed in her car, that's not the correct terminology, but apparently there were some emissions from the well that got into people, and that shouldn't happen. I mean, there's something gone wrong there, and you're sort of looking like, I never heard of that. Surely.
And I wasn't, again,
No, well,
it's hard to say.
Leslie, am I?
This is something that came up, was 2011 and 2012, I believe, when this happened. So we know it was prior to TotalEnergies being the operator. And we haven't had anything that has happened since we've been there. I understand your concern, your question is you're asking, what happened potentially, and what steps are we taking to make sure that doesn't happen again?
I can actually tell you, on September 7th, 2010, TCEQ issued a notice of violation for odor to Chesapeake as a result of an incident occurring April 20th and 21st, 2010. The violation was resolved. It doesn't say what it was. And the other violation was...
I know what that was. That was a year prior to that hissing that they're calling hissing. It was more than hissing, by the way. But it was failure to meet opacity. What they were doing, they were fracking a well, and they didn't have socks, and that, oh my God, I was like horrified. And there was a cloud of fracking sand. If that stuff gets in your lungs, that's gonna do some very serious damage to your health. So anyway, I reported that to TCEQ.
Okay, so that was after this incident. That was before this 2010.
The event, I wasn't really looking to relive it. I was just suggesting it did happen. The people who were doing it were confident as heck that they had this, and then they didn't. So I'm saying
I understand that. I mean, I think Chesapeake did a lot on probably over-promising to some degree. What we do is we take engineering controls, right? We can stand up here and say we're gonna go through some administrative controls and we're gonna teach people not to do stuff, right? But we can go through engineering controls, which is data analysis, right? Monitoring. Utilize the tracking, the temperatures, the pressures, and also we utilize acoustical monitoring as well. So that's something that I believe we're the only ones doing is an acoustical tracker, right? So we can track frequencies based on if some sort of hissing. I mean, hissing is kind of, again, it's hard to theorize. I don't know. Some of these, what was that? I didn't catch that.
I'm just a little offended that we're downplaying this whole incident. This is
Hey, I don't know the
very
incident. You're bringing up the
terrifying
incident.
event for your neighbors, and you're calling it hissing. That makes it sound very.
No, ma'am, that's how the resident described it.
I don't
Yeah.
know the event, but I'm not describing any event, right? I know, what I'm describing is some of the steps we take to avoid any sort of incidents, right?
But the same thing
So
happened
we-
7 years later at another drill site by abandoned farms with another operator. This is a very common thing, and fortunately, this man had a drone. So we have video. If anybody wants to see it, I'll be glad to share it with you.
Actually, so we talked with we actually did a training, co-training with the Arlington Fire Department, right? That's one of the steps we take to make sure they know what we're doing as well. We actually trained them, and they brought up that and how dangerous it was for someone to bring a drone in an unauthorized area, the potential gas leak situation. So to me, part of the issue is someone flew a drone, right, without knowing what was going on. And so part of our responsibility as a community is sometimes to protect the community from themselves as well, right? So what we're doing is we're acoustic monitoring. We have a large amount of pressure in data sensors, right? Acoustic monitoring is something that I've been a big fan of. We started that. So,
I think your questions might be answered a little bit more if we start going into the things that we're doing on that site, that we're not done maybe when this incident took place. That may answer your question a little bit more. If we can't speak to that particular one, we can tell you what we're doing now to help prevent that from happening.
Well, and, last time we talked about your, 7 kiloton, methane releases across 169 wells, in Arlington.
That wasn't, go ahead. You go.
That's across the entire, 2,100 wells,
Okay,
and
that-
800 pad sites, so it's not.
I swear the way it was written up there, it seemed to be 169. But anyway,
The
about
press release.
where, methane could be what the hissing was or whatever. What are you doing? Why 7 kilotons? Why not a whole lot less? Where is it coming from? Or how about this? How is it getting out? And what can you do to address it where you can go with a much more, a lower goal?
right, and we have addressed that, right? And so the 7 kilotons we're talking about, historically, the industry uses what's called low, high, and intermittent cooling devices, right? In theory, it's, think about a toilet, I think I'm using the same word, yeah. So essentially, you're utilizing gas pressure to overcome spring constant. If something triggers, you get a float that goes up, triggers a spring constant for a valve open. When that valve closes, it puffs out natural gas, right? So within the city of Arlington, we have no bleed devices that are running on natural gas. We've done a full field conversion. There's not a single pad that doesn't have air. Producing pads, we've converted them all to air. So when we talk about those reductions, Arlington, and we're not just doing it just in Arlington, right? The 7 kilotons is over the entire asset. It's over the entire field.
Okay. So what you're saying is these new wells will have the newer technology, and so therefore will hopefully not add to your numbers.
Correct, yeah.
And
Any new well we drill, we've converted all historicals, right? Any new well we drill, we convert to air immediately, right? And those are electric air compressors. So, I mean, that's what we're using as our source going forward. So,
How much does it cost to drill a well?
again, it's kind of, depends on the depth. And,
Well, of these wells, because I don't really care about these.
yeah,
We started a year and a half.
I think Dusty, you answered that question last
I
time.
said it was several $1 million. I can actually, I'm not sure. Remind me why that, okay, you'd asked, remember, I know it's several
Yeah,
$1 million.
and your answer was
Several $1 million.
a number, but it wasn't a number I could
Yeah.
put in a calculator.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. You want to put it in a calculator, what do you
I
calculate?
don't want, first of all, this is going south inappropriately. I've asked a legit question. Who the heck, you just say, why do I want to know that?
No,
Share the
we're just asking the
information
question.
Or don't.
Okay, that's fine.
Look, I did not
We can get
attack
to,
you.
I wasn't trying to attack you, I was just
asked,
asking.
I thought a reasonable question, how much, just so that the group would have an idea of how much money we're talking about.
so it's hard, somewhere in $500 to $600 per lateral length, right? And I know that's not answering your question specifically, because I don't know lateral lengths. If we did, I can tell you exactly, but we're in that $4 to $6 million range.
Okay,
Right.
that's a number, you can't tell
Right.
me we're days from drilling and you don't have a budget, you don't
We
know. how much
do,
money
I
it's
don't,
gonna
I can
cost.
look it up, I can tell you exactly here in a second, if you want me to, but that $46 million is where we're at. Part of it is gas prices are lower, right, so how do we adjust, do we pull back, do we spend less? That's part of it, so.
And so how much does it cost to plug a well? And are the taxpayers gonna be on the hook for that when you drill and get out? I mean, what's gonna happen? Are you gonna leave us with abandoned wells? Is there anything in the gas drilling ordinance that specifically
We
states?
actually, we've got an active plugging program that ranges between, I think last year was 80 wells. We're in the process now of plugging a few already, in Arlington, at a couple pads, and so we've been working with your inspector there, and, I think there's 3 pads that we've done that on. So across the basin, that many, and when end of life comes for those wells, we've been very diligent and a good operator in plugging those, and have for many years.
But you can't guarantee us that you're not gonna sell off your assets like Chesapeake did. And then, some other third-tier operator buys these.
And I think that's my point, is if wells are gonna be drilled in your city, I think we should all be happy that it's the 4th largest oil and gas company that's able to do these and do it the right way, rather than,
But like I
it's a
said,
smaller.
we don't know if you're gonna sell off your assets after you drill those wells. We have no guarantee, there's nothing in writing.
There's no guarantee on our way.
But there's still a credible.
Catherine might elaborate on this, but we have, for RC bonds that are.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got bonds with
Let's
the state. We've got a very aggressive plugging program, so.
But that's paid for by the taxpayers.
No, it's not. We're paying for every
We
bit.
have an allocated budget every year.
We pay for every one of the, we plug it
I can
ourselves,
assure
we
you,
pay
no
for it.
resident.
Just like we pay for the drilling, just like we pay for
But
the
yeah, you can't
completion.
guarantee you're still gonna be around after you
And
drill.
I can't guarantee that I'm not gonna get in a wreck on the way
Yeah.
home.
But that's why we need something, an assurance, I guess.
That's what the bond is.
That's why I have the bonds, like, it comes with the road commission, and all the inspection fees that we pay, I mean, that hasn't been an issue, and again, we've had this diligent program that maybe y'all aren't aware of, that.
Well, that's why the RRC is in place, and that's why there's codes in Arlington. I mean, every operator is held to the same responsibilities.
I mean, even.
Not just
even
us.
in Arlington, I know we plugged the Pruitt pad a number of years ago, and then development is right there on it. The Royal Arch pad, I think that was one we plugged. Crossbar, I'm trying to think of Crossbar, and then I know we've got 3 others that we're working with you on.
Now, why can't you drill these wells from the Bright Star or from TCC? That's right here.
I think we've answered that question already, yeah.
Because you don't care about the neighbors. We're trying to reduce our impact.
We had.
Ms. Lynn, if we didn't care about the neighbors, we wouldn't be here tonight doing a voluntary follow-up meeting.
We've got a question.
Go ahead.
The state does have a lot of orphaned wells that aren't capped.
Our site, Folsom?
No, I'm saying statewide.
Oh, statewide, the state, okay.
Is there somebody who can get us the cost to cap versus the cost of the bond?
So on the Railroad Commission website,
Uh-huh.
if you can, and I can't tell you exactly how to do it without a computer. If you can pull up a list of all inactive wells in the state, pull it up by operator or wherever, however you want to do it. Each well has a value attached to it, which is the estimated plugging amount. So it's somewhere usually around like 38,000, something like that. However, I mean, each well, so when we as an operator have to renew our operator bond or our operatorship with the state every year, we get a list of all of our inactive wells and the estimated cost value of plugging each one of them. And so that is public information that you can find on the Railroad Commission's. So that is estimating how much it's gonna cost. So what we at Total do is we provide an extra bond with the state to cover those costs, should anything happen. And
That's
then,
required of all operators, yes.
you're required to either, put in an additional bond, or you're required to plug 10% of your wells every year, or bring them back on production.
So this is just kind of a question, just from my understanding, so that site, was inactive for how long? It's been several years.
The Folsom.
Well, it's
No, it's been producing.
Oh, it has?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Because
it's been
it
producing
didn't
the
seem
whole-
like any activity was there, I guess just from going past it, you maybe you can't tell. But so
And,
it
and that's
has
the
been.
way these would go, is you had your, you know, a few weeks of drilling, a few weeks of completions, and then it would be in the same state that it's been in the past 12 years, production.
And our intention is for you to not, like, we're not trying to nuisance on the neighborhood either. I mean, it's good to hear that you didn't know much was going on for the past 12 years, because we've been active.
And
Oh, okay,
it's been
see,
active.
I wasn't aware of that, I mean, just.
It's been active, and the royalty owners have been getting paid, these past 12 years, so.
We're getting about $8 a month. I want to kind of compare with my neighbors and see what they're getting.
You know what? I don't think we've gotten $200 total since the beginning.
It was less than 200.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, our first check was like $25.
It's not worth risking my health for $8 a month.
Yeah,
There's no way.
So all of you sign oil and gas leases?
Right.
I don't.
Under false pretenses.
You're
and
a lot
they herded
more
us
to
in
get
like a
there.
bunch of cattle on a train. It was awful.
Maybe.
We didn't even have a chance to read the contract. There were
Or
a lot of
mine was
problems.
110 by 60.
Okay, I think that's a different discussion. We're not gonna go down that path. I'd like to recognize, Paige Payne has joined us. She's, one of the P and Z members, and she just joined us. Wanted to welcome her to the meeting.
Sorry, running late.
No worries.
Thanks for coming.
Since we're on the emissions reduction, Brent, do you wanna talk a little bit more about some of the things that are on here, or do you want Dr. Shaw to kind of chime in on some of these things that we're doing? Or-
Either way.
And then I can switch back to
Talk about the
safety.
natural gas devices, that's what I was talking about when you talk about continuous, right? That's very possible that as those valves overcome the spring constant, there's a public gas in it, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Leslie, did you ask me to speak to something? I'm having difficulty hearing.
No worries, Brent's talking right now. We'll get you to chime in here in a second on emissions.
But, you know, as I mentioned earlier, the air compressors, that's an active project for us. Arlington's 100% completed on all electric pad sites.
Hey Brent, do you want to come over here by the computer and talk so Dr. Shaw can hear you? Can you make it? He hurt his foot, so he's kind of limping on us.
Doctor, Sandra, you want to take some of the others? I mean, the electric capacity.
Yeah, I can talk. So electric drilling rigs, so this site already has electricity to the site. We drilled it previously before it was even required in the ordinance. We drilled it with an electric drilling rig. We've been doing that again before it was in the ordinance and Senate sought to do so. I'll skip to, so zero flaring, we're not gonna flare on this. Brent's already chimed in on the natural gas conversions, I believe was Mike's question. And all of the city of Arlington pads are 100% converted, per Brent. So that's inactive across the field, but in Arlington, we've already done that. We do have solar, power on some of the pads. We've actually, that picture there shows that we did our field office just east of Fort Worth, about 5 miles. And so we did have that solar power. We've got a branch within Total that does solar power. We were fortunate enough to get that project approved and done. So that's 80% of our power at our field office is provided from the solar. And then Brent, did you want to chime in on the solar that you use on the pads?
Yeah, so when I talk about the SCADA, obviously it's our telemetry systems. But yeah, we're utilizing SCADA and solar panels there. So that's, when we talk about the inspection, that's typically what we're looking for, is making sure people don't come in and steal our solar panels and batteries. But yeah, we're utilizing that for our communication. So it also helps us, when we start getting cold spells, we have backup power. We're utilizing solar on these pad sites as well.
And then the next bullet below that is the longer laterals on the wells. That's a good thing because it keeps us from drilling less wells. And then
That gives us really more wells.
more wells. It's less wells, a longer lateral, less wells, and we're quicker now than we used to be at those. And then also too, we said previously, we don't have any new pads planned within Arlington. Everything that we're trying to get to is longer laterals from our existing pads. The diesel fuel additive,
similar to what you see to, kind of what the new diesel vehicles are doing too. It's all an intention to bring down the visual impacts of diesel. So it's a cleaner burning fuel additives. And then the synthetic base mud, so that was actually a direct response from a resident that had some concerns about smells previously, right? There was an issue, or I say there was an issue, there were some concerns with some of the drilling fluid we were using, which was diesel based. So we fully converted away from any sort of diesel based drilling mud and gone full mineral based.
And all these are voluntary things that we've done that maybe not everybody's aware of, that we take for granted because we've been doing them. The only one out there that's a requirement out of the city is electric drilling, but again, this time, we did electric drilling the first time. And so, many years ago, that was set up. So any questions on some of these things that we've already been doing and committed to?
Well, I'm gonna say you make it look really nice, but again, I've been talking to people who are at your active drill sites right now, Bruder and Truman, and they're experiencing the same impacts that we experienced when Chesapeake was in our neighborhood. It is what it is. I mean, it's heavy industrial activity that you're trying to make fit into a residential neighborhood, and it's never going to be compatible. It just isn't because of what it is. So.
I have a question. How much of your, could you elaborate a little more on your SCADA system? How is it incorporated into your gas controls and, I mean, because some say, is it all automated or is it manual automated?
Yeah, I mean, so we do, it's a two-pronged approach, obviously, right? So there's alarms, there's shutdowns, and then there's alerts. And there's optimization as well. So it depends on the scenario. I really enjoy our SCADA because I think it's a pretty cool technology. But essentially, we can pull in a lot of data. We can get really complicated. But we can run complex algorithms to look at multiple scenarios, to look at downhole production optimization, right? So we look at how is the well responding, line pressure changes from a third party, how do we adjust? We can get super complicated. In theory, all we're doing is transmitting as much data as we can every 15 minutes. Look at pressures, temperatures, flow rates, battery voltage on the well. If we go from 12.2 or 12.4 down to 0, we know someone stole our battery. So we get an alarm off of that. We can look at flow rates, something shut in, right, we're pressuring up. It's all part of our ability to understand and oversee operations. So all of that's being tracked. We store a historical log, and we can also pull that data back. We can run some complex data algorithms to look at historicals, how we improve, how we get better, so on and so on. So it's a lot of just data transfer is essentially what it is.
Yeah, but how much of this is automated? How much of your controls are automated? I mean, because some of these instrumentations can go out, and who's there to respond to those instruments when they go out?
It's a great question. So everything we have is a fail-safe system. So everything we install requires pressure to open and communication to open, right? So at any point, if we lose pressure, we lose communication, we lose battery voltage, there's a mechanical override that shuts down, right? There's also, we've trained our fire department, save our own fire department on the ESD shutdown button. We also build high specs to 3 levels of failure. We've over-engineered the things, but the biggest thing is if something happens, it's a fail shut scenario, which is what we want. And there's no ability to reopen a well remotely. That's one thing that we put. There's no ability to open a well remotely.
Do you know what the response time would be? If an instrument goes out that's critical and you have to respond, or someone has to respond to it to get it repaired?
Yeah, so we run a system, we run an internal system we built that can really basically alarms, and we have night operators as well. Our night operators are kind of running around making sure more from a security standpoint. We also have night rovers. A lot of it depends on what the issue is, right? I mean, we have people there working 365 days a year. So we break that up. They run different schedules. But typically it's following morning or within a few hours that same day, depending on the issue.
But that's after, if there was an issue, it was remotely shut down.
Correct.
Yeah.
once there's an issue, the well gets shut in, there's no more production, so the issue actually would be stopped at that point. And then the lease operator would go to the location to identify and repair the issue. I can tell you that for our leak detection and repair program, the average response to a repair is that it's completed within 1 day or less. So if they're doing that for leak detection and repair, if the production's gone down, that's like their revenue source, they're gonna be on it real quick too.
So what kind of redundancy systems do you have to, I mean, as far as your computer systems are concerned, you've gotta have, a system that's controlling or monitoring your, whatever is going on and providing you alarms and events. So if the system goes out, do you have some sort of redundancy system as a backup?
Yeah, so we have remote servers as well. So we can send data, and if for some reason there's communication loss, we can actually break down our radio waves to different towers. So we can look at primary and secondary, and sometimes tertiary type radio towers. So if there's a connection point, we can actually ping off another radio tower to go through a different system to a different server. So we do have some redundancies on that side. Even on the PAT side itself, we have redundant mechanical, right? So we're not relying fully on SCADA. There is mechanical and pressure on site that we can monitor as well. So it's a two-pronged approach, right? So we can rely on data, we can rely on mechanical, and we can rely on even more safety on top of that with engineering controls.
Did you say that there's cameras all the time or just during drilling?
And Arlington's requirements are video, right?
Well, what was the question again, I'm sorry?
The cameras on site, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 24/7 in Arlington.
Okay, so at what point do you all contact the fire department or emergency response? Like if it's shut down, you could assume something went wrong. Do you send somebody out or you'll check the camera?
So all those calls go into our operations center that's manned 24/7. They all have the cameras up in those control rooms as well, but typically we don't dispatch fire departments. We've talked to the fire departments and we've trained them up on what to do. Typically the response is pull the button, right? That's what we've trained them on, is pull the button. That's a full ESD shutdown. It shuts every mechanical and every digital, every electronic valve on location. So that's what we train them to do as well.
What if your predecessors had an incident where they didn't call the fire department right away?
Who's the private?
I know.
Was it Chesapeake?
Yeah.
So probably. I don't know who that would be. Okay. Part of the thing is.
Brett, why don't you sit at the table, since you're getting a lot of questions? Yeah. We're gonna move you up closer.
But that operations center that's manned 24/7, it's a really neat room that's got, it's kind of like a NASA control center almost in my mind, but has a lot of screens that everything kind of funnels into that from a security standpoint.
So in addition to alarms and monitoring, there's cameras that they're monitoring as well to see if anything's going on site. And then we respond as necessary. I mean, I think if the fire department needs to be called, we call the fire department. But, I mean, we respond first, call comes into us, and we take care of it and take every step that's necessary
We have
at
no
that
issue
point.
calling it. I'm happy for them, but, that's one thing we talk to them about too, is if we'll call them, they can call us. It's a partnership on that approach too.
And that kind of actually pretty well leads into our safety and training, and Adam, we're probably gonna pull you into this conversation a little bit too, and just to show you a few more things, I think you've talked about this a little bit. You two wanna kind of take this slide and tell them a little bit more about our safety and training?
Sure, yeah, like Brent talked about earlier on the emergency shutdown devices, each one of our well sites has the emergency shutdown device. We also have the other devices in place where his lease operators can shut those wells in remotely if necessary. The emergency devices, they're tested annually. We have it's 99.9%, that they're functioning, and if they're not functioning right then they're taken care of and replaced. So that's a constant, ongoing process, and Brent can probably elaborate more on that.
Yeah, that's that's any sort of pressure vessel, right? Propane tanks, anything like that. We also have redundancies, so, we calculate all the sizes of the orifice valves based on, I think 300% flow rates. I mean, so it's excessive to what the wells can do. That's a last ditch. The ESD buttons, the digital, all the shutdowns, all the safety systems, they're there for a reason, right? So we track all those, we inspect all those, and we have very good success rate on those.
And that's one thing we pride ourselves in, like, we said earlier, I mean, we work for the fourth largest oil and gas company in the world, and they're, they want not only our employees, our contractors, but we wanna be a good neighbor, and we want, we all have family that lives in, Arlington area, so, that's what, I wouldn't want my family living next to the Folsom if it wasn't safe, so that's not the business we're in. So, all our training, all our contractors, we do a lot of training with them. We vet those contractors to make sure that we have the safest contractors and the most competent contractors working for us. Like Brent said, we do a lot of training with Arlington Fire Department, their special response team. We go to their training facility and we conduct classroom training, and we take them out to our locations. They've gone to frac locations, to just the regular production locations. A lot of those guys, they're unsure, that's, when they got into the fire service, that's not something they expected to learn was, oil and gas operations, but those guys are, we have a great partnership with them, and they're, it's really well received, and, they appreciate the training we get, we appreciate them.
Linda, did you have a question?
Yeah, when was the last training session that you had with Arlington Fire?
We had training in November of 2022.
2022. And so are there specific fire department staff that are assigned to this?
Yes, they refer to themselves as just like their special operations team, and those guys are all, that's their forte is oil and gas and special response type situations.
We trained we had 3 full days with a full classroom.
Right,
So I'm pretty sure we hit more than just their.
Than just the special team.
And the other thing I'll mention too is we didn't just do Arlington, right? We're not just gonna train Arlington just because of this particular.
Right.
Fort Worth, we've done White Settlement. It's something that's mutually beneficial for everybody to understand, right? And that's, so, we talk about Arlington here, but we've continued to do it, and we've seen, to my opinion, I like talking about this. I like training about it, and they've been very receptive to it. And I think they walk away with a much better understanding of what their roles are, what our roles are, and it gets that mutual benefit.
So is it like a once a year training, or do you just do it as needed? I mean, because I'm sure that things change, like you said, with the air conditioning.
They rotate fire personnel in and out, so when they get a fresh group in, then we come back in and retrain also.
Okay.
So it's the same way with their higher ups, like right now Captain Golden is the captain over that special operations team, so he's the one that I work with, and we set that training up.
Okay. Thanks.
And not only external training, I've participated since I've been here in some of the internal training. And, the tabletop and the on-site incident, I mean, that to me, from even in my role, sitting and listening and all the things we do, and it's a real life scenario that we basically kind of work through. Mm-hmm. And we learn from that, and we sit there and everybody goes around the table, how each one of us would respond in our roles and help each other and see where, okay, let's adjust, let's do this better. And then if we have an incident, because inevitably things do happen in life, if there is an incident, we fully evaluate that incident and do additional training after that incident as well.
Can I go back? How many are other wells on this site capped?
We have
No,
2.
They're producing.
Yeah,
And they've been producing the entire time.
Just not much.
I mean, the first 2 years or so of most of the production, and then beyond that, it just kind of tapers off. But yeah, they've been in production since they were drilled.
What year?
Okay, and how many are there?
2010,
3?
I think.
There are 2 producing wells.
2 producing?
Yeah.
Do they have the pneumatic sleeves?
pneumatic, you mean the air compression devices?
The what?
You mean the air
Yes.
compression for the valves?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got it.
Okay.
All of Arlington's been converted to air compression.
All of Arlington is?
What-
Just not like 714.
No, we're making a good progress
I know,
there.
I understand. I'm still trying to put my head around 7 kilotons.
Sorry, it's not funny.
It's, and then, so the ops center, I think that question, we wanna make sure everybody has that number. Again, that's our 24/7 man, kind of NASA control center, if you will. Actually, at that same field office that I just showed you with the solar. We encourage everybody to keep that number handy, and it won't go to an evergreen phone when somebody's physically there. You can even test it right now if you wanted to, and somebody can answer.
Yeah, from an operations side, I call this at times too, right? It's a good resource for everybody. I was on the Truman location, I had to have them call because I had someone sleeping in front of the gate, right? So that's how we utilize them to have contacts with local authorities. They document everything in the ticket, so we can track everything too. So that's a great number for anybody to have for any reason.
So why is it TEEP Barnett? Because I had always seen TEP Barnett LLC.
Yeah. We did a rebranding initiative, and so it's TotalEnergies, and that's the extra E.
Our parent company went from Total to TotalEnergies because we are one of the only companies worldwide that has committed to multiple energy strategy. That was one of the slides we've had before, where they're focused on solar and wind, battery power, we're looking at LNG. Our focus is there,
So-
even at the hydro carbon.
What makes it really tricky to find violations on the Railroad Commission website, right? Like
We operate
names
as
and-
TEP Barnett USA LLC, so that's the name you need to know for,
And-
that is our,
I
that's
mean,
how we
like
operate.
the logo down the bottom, that's when all this occurred. It used to be like kind of a world with a logo, and now it's a T, and cursive T and E with the various colors.
So going back to the safety, I had a question for you, because I know you were talking about your wonderful track record, but would you talk about the incident at the home run pad site in Fort Worth, where this like slick substance, this well, everything came up in the well and ended up on everybody's properties, on their cars, and it took a year to get that report back from TCQ. That's how slow the process is when you file a complaint.
They said it was salt or something. Salt? Yeah.
Well, they call it salt water, but that's the stuff they inject into the injection well, so it probably has radioactivity and who knows what is in that stuff.
The wells produce salt
I
water.
can speak to that.
But they call it salt water, and they not what
It is salt
yeah.
Sandra, we'll let you speak to that.
So, we have water that comes out of our wells, it's called production water, and it is very salty. In our area, it's a salty water, so very frequently it is referred to as salt water. And that's what we actually send to our disposal wells, because we want to produce gas, not water. So that was what was coming out, production water. We don't inject, we don't intentionally inject things unless it's decapitated, right? So that would need to completely different.
Saltwater
When-
from Black.
When you say salt water, you mean sodium chloride or calcium carbonate? I mean, what
I mean,
salt?
like
So it's-
salt and minerals from the formation, the hydraulic fracturing, you put the water into a rock, you fracture the rock. And so when you put water in, well, the water comes in from natural sources, because there's the Ellenberger formation. That water's gonna interact with the rock formation and get salty, and then
Okay.
come up through the well,
So various salts, but not,
Correct.
So what about all the chemicals you're injecting? That's all coming up too.
That comes back and flow back.
And so, flow back's
Can we
doing
bring
first.
that in? Because I have pictures of the tanks and all that stuff they call it steam, but it smells
If
really
it's coming
bad.
out, someone would die next to it, and we have people on site during flow back, so that's not
You're
possible.
inhaling that.
It's enclosed.
It's not possible.
It's enclosed.
Maybe the frac, so, did we bring a frac over?
Yeah,
We want our people to go.
And that's one thing I can speak on is, I mean, we have people on these sites during drilling, during fracturing, during flowback, and then we have our operators on locations after, when production starts, after the wells are completed. And that's, when we're regulated by OSHA to keep our people safe, our contractors safe. And so they're on those pads, during the entire drilling operation, on the entire, fracturing operation, and also during production. And you know, if it was such a risk and health issue, our employees and our contractors would be physically ill.
Well, my husband was getting nosebleeds, and the same day my neighbor was getting a nosebleed. He's never had a nosebleed in all the years I've done it, and they were flowing back as well, so yeah.
I've worked in the
Having
industry for
health effects.
18 years and never had a nosebleed in my life. I mean, and I'm not just saying that.
I was pregnant doing HSE inspections on location, and I am healthy, and so is my child. I mean,
Well, that's good. I got.
But to your
very
point on the
ill
water,
when
we
they were
run water
operating.
analysis with, I like the chemical side of things, I like understanding the downhole stuff. We run full water analysis, and we have mineralogists, we run full analysis on the water too.
So you do like eye chromatography and see what all they got?
Yep, so we can do electron spectrometers, really dive into the details and stuff too. And typically the biggest thing is understanding how you don't get mineral deposits, just like your shower head, right? Get that much salt, get mineral deposits. Exact same thing.
If you live in Arlington, you know calcium carbonate.
I used to live a mile, I drove back here, I used to live a mile down the road here. It's kind of my little stomping ground, so.
So this is Frac Focus, and this is where you can go and find a well and look up any information on any chemicals that are used. We have to report. And this is fracfocus.org.
Okay, why are you required to report?
Why are we required to report? It's part of the regulations that we're required to report chemicals.
that way people know what's in the water.
So, yeah, drill into, pun not intended, into the Folsom site and pull up what we got.
I apologize, I'm confused. If you're required to report it, how is it, proprietary?
It's not proprietary. We're telling you where you can go find the information on what we
Would you
use.
is it possible to just show us real quick?
On one of these particular wells.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Catherine, you wanna come do this since you're the one that files these? I'll let you do it. You can probably do it faster than me.
Okay, I don't do it from this angle, but, I do all the recording, so. It's just, you can just look up tap on it. See what comes up.
Here, I'll let you do it. This is just different. Log in. Advanced. We have our own login side of it, so it's a little bit different than this one.
Okay, so are y'all gonna show us how we can do it?
Yeah, we're not logged in, so this is what you can do.
But I don't think they show the proprietary chemicals, right? Isn't that still? I don't think we get.
The frac companies, if they have a proprietary chemical, they're allowed to keep it proprietary. That is correct.
That's a problem, because we don't know what we're being exposed to.
Well, I mean.
Just like the fault lines, we don't get to know where those are. We have seismicity in our.
Kind of strange,
Yeah,
we
I mean, it's
can't
been
find out where the fault lines are.
And this is how they use it.
Okay, so, for instance, let's pull up the first well here. And you just click on the PDF. And it pulls up every chemical that was used to frack that well.
Can you blow that up a little bit, a little line?
So what about people in the neighborhood that have chemical sensitivities, like myself? It's gonna be a big problem.
This is going down.
Yeah, scroll down.
This is slipstream into a pressurized system that goes down.
It's never exposed to acid.
Sand, hydrochloric acid.
Sodium chloride.
And that goes
And we
in.
were smelling rotten eggs, and then the industry kept saying, well, that's not coming from us.
And we did not log into this, so you can go look
We can
exactly
go
what we're
look,
showing,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, and she's talking about, rotten eggs and you had HCl up there, so I think we answered that one.
You said HCl, hydrochloric acid, yeah. That's probably, that's what it's slipstreamed into a pressurized system. The rotten egg smell that a lot of people smell from gas is that gas doesn't have another, so it's called mercaptan, right? So in a pipeline system or in a, okay, what I'm just trying to explain, on a normal pipeline or residential, if you do smell a rotten egg smell, it's called mercaptan, right? Those industries, I used to have to put them in one of my summer gigs, which was not fun, but they're called steam pots, right? So they're designed because gas doesn't have that odor. That's where the rod makes smell comes from. You guys smell it as a reservation. It's put in there on purpose for you to smell it. You say, hey, there's something wrong, right? It doesn't exist. We don't have no caffeine. Utilize HCl, hydrochloric acid, to break down calcium carbonates, right? So that's slipstream into a high pressure system, right? It's not this big vat that we just dump over and suck it. You know, it's pressurized in a slipstream system. It's atomized into a slipstream, and it's pumped down a day. So that's why we reported publicly. We have no concerns anybody seeing this. There's zero issues from our side. So it's all contained. Perceived odor, it's hard for me to tell what your definition of prop makes are.
This was overwhelming, and it was, all these weird things were happening when there was activity on that site. And then like when you guys went away and it wasn't just producing quietly, right? We didn't have any of that stuff going on. It was only when there was a lot of activity. And I want an explanation as to why my explosive gas alarm kept going off in my house periodically when there were, I don't know, something must have been coming off that bad site. So our house is all electric, so are our neighbors.
I would recommend calling Atlas.
My carbon monoxide, please, I don't have gas piped into my house, and it's all electric. So please explain, I think there were things like plumes coming off that site.
Well,
Because
methane is what it
I would
is,
get
so it goes
headaches, I would like get really sleepy, and then that alarm would go off.
Methane is a
So are you gonna
toxic gas.
provide explosive gas alarms for the residents who live near the site?
That's
So we
actually
can
really important
monitor our
point that
homes?
Dr. Shaw will elaborate on, is that methane is not toxic to your health. It's not going to do that, and as I mentioned earlier, it's lighter in the air, so it's going to go up. It's
So
not
why-
going
Dr.
to-
Shaw, I know you're having a hard time hearing
You should
this.
speak more because this is, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, can you explain what I needed to visit about?
The health impacts.
The health impacts on site and how, we had that discussion earlier about the health impacts of the, emission, anything on the site.
Sure. Yeah, and so I heard some discussion about concerns with methane, and I did hear that someone pointed out that methane is not a toxic. Methane, basically, the reason that we're concerned about methane emissions is purely from a climate concern. It's not one that causes any toxic effects on humans. In fact, the only way you can be harmed by natural gas is if it gets to such a concentration that it basically displaces oxygen. And so it would be like CO2 in that regard, and that it's not toxic, it does not cause cancer, it does not cause any neurological impacts. And so the reason that we're controlling and concerned about methane is from a climate standpoint. We are trying to make sure as well that there are any toxics that may be along with the natural gas are controlled. And typically what you would look for, benzene would be a chemical that would be sort of one that if you have that under control, you can usually assume that all the other potential toxics are under control as well. We're fortunate for two reasons. One, in the Barnett Shale, the natural gas is a very low benzene concentration. And furthermore, the innovations in the industry, and especially those that we've seen TotalEnergies take to reduce the emissions at the source, have made it where benzene levels in Arlington are extremely low. It's one of the most monitored areas in the world. In fact, Texas has about 84, 85 monitors for VOCs, which would include benzene and other toxins of concern. I think the state with the next highest is maybe 20. So we have many more monitors that are there. And at this point, we don't have any of those monitors in the state of Texas that are showing levels that are above the levels that the state has determined to be protected. I can talk a little bit about the levels that are there. If you, for example, went through the air monitoring comparison values, these are the levels that TCQ compares to monitor. We have a monitor at UT. It's been online since, I think, 2012, so about 10 years worth of data. And it historically continues to show no levels of concern based on the air monitoring comparison value. And if you hear that and you think, well, how close is it? Well, the air monitoring comparison value is 1.4 parts per billion on a volume basis for benzene. The average you've seen at that monitoring site in UT Arlington has been about 0.12, 0.11 compared against 1.4. And by the way, it sits about 100 yards from an active pad site that has, I believe, upwards of a dozen or maybe even 2 dozen wells that are on that site. And it's not seeing any issues with
Dr.
anything.
Staub, I'm gonna interrupt you real quick. Wait just a second. We wanna pull up your slides because you've got a lot of information you're sharing, but I think maybe the points are not being made.
Sure.
Oh, we don't have
Yeah,
them?
thank you.
Oh, we don't have them. Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, also, if you're worried about benzene, what about like toluene and xylene? I mean, anything else in there?
No, that's kind of what he was saying really quickly, is that we have threshold limits set by the TCEQ for that, what they monitor for. And those are 100, what is it, 100 times, was it higher or lower?
Yeah, so I looked at the different chemical constituents at the UT Arlington site, and none of them are close to the thresholds. And so we're not seeing any of those that are threshold of concern. The point that was being made is that the comparison value that I'm saying that none of them are even close to, the way that TCQ sets that level is they've scoured the literature, they've used third party to lay out this process, and it's actually an internationally recognized approach to things. They determine what level would be the minimum concentration whereby you would start to see any adverse health effects. And for benzene, they consider all the different methods that are modes of operation or modes of action that may cause issues, whether it be cancer or low birth weight or any of those factors. They take the one that is the lowest level, so the one that would be most likely to be triggered first, and that's where they set what they call the representative value. And at that one, then TCQ lowers that value by a factor of 100. So they set the air monitoring comparison value at 100 times lower than the concentration where you would start to see any negative impact associated with exposure to benzene. They do that not because you would expect to have issues if you approach that air monitoring comparison value, which is 1.4 for benzene, but because that way, if you start approaching that air monitoring comparison value, that gives TCQ time to go in and see if there are trends or things to be concerned about to make sure it doesn't get up to the level where you might see concerns with that. And so it's an very ultra conservative approach to that. And so that approach leads, for example, with benzene of a 1.4 parts per billion threshold, and we're seeing levels that are consistently lower. In fact, the average has been in the order of 0.1 to 0.2 at the UT Arlington monitor that's there. And again, also just recognize that if you think about benzene and other chemicals being a concern, you're very likely exposed to higher concentrations in your home than what you're seeing outside in the ambient air. In fact, the typical concentrations you see in your home for benzene are on the order of 0.8 to 1.8 part per billion, and what we're seeing in the ambient air at the UT monitor is again about 0.1, so much lower. And again, not to say that you don't want to keep an eye on these things, and that's why the industry has continued to innovate and do things like the no bleed and no emissions of the bleed valves in order to minimize even the smallest amounts of contaminants that may be emitted.
I think that answers the question. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I apologize if I went fast. If there are any follow-up questions, please ask. I'm happy to slow down and try to address them.
So on the slides, resolution, did we make it through all of them?
We did. We went through all the questions. Yep.
One question I can make. So just so I was clear on it, you said that it was active for all this time and there hasn't been any incidents whatsoever, correct? Is that what I heard correct?
Yeah, we drilled, so I think the question was, there was a mission of something that's happened in 2011.
2010 and 2011.
2010, 2011. And so, going forward, I think the question was, has there been any activity? Because we haven't really noticed anything. And the question, so it has been in production. So there is the activity of the 2 to 3 months of, to drill and complete the wells. But then there's that long time frame to where it is just in production and there hasn't been.
So all this time, there's nothing's, okay.
I mean,
But the production hasn't been as,
and these would be the same way. There were 2 wells drilled, and this first, year is when a lot of production is, but then it's still producing. It's been producing. These are just 2 wells that were.
So do you know how much it's producing per day, per month?
It's on
Roughly about 700 MCF per day.
Okay.
So it's on an unconventional, so I won't get too nerdy, but, you know, in the Barnett, it's a very tight rock, so you get a lot of your production up front, so that's where you get high production and really trailing off. So you do get higher volumes, higher royalties right off the bat.
Right.
And you said 700 what?
700 MCF per day.
MCF.
So.
Million cubic
feet per day. So,
Okay, so in
700
comparison to when it was, when the first drill,
right, I'd have to go back and look.
Well, like Rocking Horse, I mean, compared to that, that's 1 year old. What's
Yeah,
that?
Rocking Horse
producing?
is doing, that's a big
That's
animal.
it, it was like, was it
I think we're at 25
700?
million
Yeah.
cubic feet per day.
25 million compared to 700?
yeah, that's a little bit of a difference there.
I can nerd out on the unconventional. Yeah, where we're at, you get a lot of your value in the first few years, right? Because it's a tight rock, so you get a large amount of gas and then it declines over time. But we're in an asset. That's what we strive. I mean, most of our wells, the Rocking Horse is an exception to the rule. We operate these wells everywhere. This is the common well size. That's 700 MCF, you know, to 1 million, you know, to 1,000 MCF per day. That's a common pad site for us. If it wasn't, we would shut it in, right? We live in an area that's a very common well, not just for us, for every operator. And like it was mentioned, we've operated it we personally have operated it for about 6 years. Prior to it, obviously it was on since 2011. So I can't speak to that, but it sounds like there hasn't been any major issues, which pleases me, but I still understand.
Since we took over operation, there's
The
not.
historical piece is one thing, we need to make sure and keep it that way, right? So I'm not living on the past and the history of what's been done. We want to make sure that nothing else happens in the future as well. So that's one of our big
And
pushes.
since we have been operator, I mean, we've done a good job at drilling within the city. I know we drilled, I think, 5 wells off the White Pad, about 6 wells off Cornerstone. And this is all since 2017. We drilled 7, I think, Rocking Horse wells. We just finished 6 Truman wells, and we're in the midst of 11 on the Brooder. But on these wells, I think we've done a good job. I mean, they've gone very successful.
The fact that you didn't even know they were active says that we're doing a good job.
It says the checks aren't coming.
So get ready for the checks to come.
Yeah, but if he just told me it's 700, it's gonna be like that. The Rocket Horse is what makes the checks come.
It's not like I go past every day.
And that's the way this would work. Again, this would be the 2 wells you drill, you see the flurry of activity, and then there'd be a long time of just steady production.
Well, and then, future, you basically said there's only one more, well coming in there, and based on all the,
Yeah.
There's 2 more wells.
Yeah, so it's these 2 wells are what we're seeking.
well, no, what, for the life of it, you know, that pad site is approved for 6, and don't you?
Yeah, so it's got 2 existing, and then we're seeking 2 wells here. At the last meeting, I think, Jane said that there was 15 wells that were planned, and that's not the case. We checked internally, and the very max, that would be, if everything came together and they released everything, it would be 4 more, but that was never a guarantee, but that was the most that would ever be.
Okay, so there's 2 possible after these 2, and they would have to go southeast.
Yes, these go to the northwest, and then the others would go, that I saw would be, northeast and south, I believe. So, but those are not,
That's,
it's.
So northeast would be our neighborhood, yeah?
no, you get the one on the right this time. It's going right under your house.
Great.
And to Ms. Lynn's question, in asking if we can go from another place, and the answer that we gave is a short answer, but it is evaluated. It's not something that we're just saying, no, we can't do that. It's something that we've actually looked at and evaluated, and that's why the decision was made.
Without getting started, do you have a question?
No, I don't have
I was just saying, from we can get really technical, but when you start getting out different levels, you gotta start looking into torques, pipe ratings. There's a lot of, it's not as simple as just, can you go here, right? There's a lot of thought and effort that goes through the planning side of things. And we do as much as we can to minimize the impacts. I mean, that's not something we're trying to take lightly on. Nope, we're not gonna do it. You know, we've evaluated it, we've changed in forward, we've made it, we've been able to adjust where we go from. But you have to look at how far is it going, how much torque you can have on the, you know, we don't want a bigger rig here, right? To go deeper, to go longer, you need the bigger rig. We wanna get in and out as much as possible. So there's a
temperature.
exactly, yeah.
Are you using Schlumberger or Halliburton?
Neither.
Really?
Yeah. So
Some
Schlumberger's
French
our,
company?
what's that?
Some French company?
Yeah, no, so that's one of the big things, Adam brought up our vendors. The vendors we're using, they're local people, right? So that's one of the things we try to align ourselves with consistent vendors, that have some stake in the game too. And we've, you know, if they don't perform from a safety standpoint, or from a performance standpoint, they don't work with us. So we're consistently, the reason we got this rig, the reason there was a hiatus is because we went back to Ensign 129, which was our drilling rig company, because we got rid of the other rig that we didn't feel like was cutting it, right? There was nothing, no incidents happened with the other rig. We felt like Ensign was the best rig possible to do this. So we got rid of the other rig and brought in Ensign, we waited on it, right? And that's what we do, is we try to align ourselves with the best possible vendors we can, to do it as safe and as efficiently as possible. So, but no, not Halliburton or Schlumberger. Neither, they don't meet either of those.
Do I recall that there are 12 available sites on the pads? I mean, 12 total, so if we have 4 left, then 8 of them have already been.
No, it's six, there's only 2.
Yeah, no, there's 2 existing wells on the pad right now. We're seeking 2, tomorrow night. And then, if the max ever happened as far as what we could do on that pad, it'd be for later.
I mean, at the site, I apologize.
Yeah.
There's just 2 wells, there's just,
There's,
Six total potential, right? 2 on the pad currently.
are there 2 pads?
no,
Folsom pad. No, it's the same pad. 2 wells off the same
Were you
pad.
talking about Bruder? You said 11?
I don't know.
So we've worked Folsom pad in itself. We've got the existing wells. Can you pull up the map?
I thought we showed this, y'all showed us.
So 6 is the max that they can
So
put in.
that's part of the push is to keep us from going to another pad site, is you drill as many off at the same pad site as possible, right?
And
So
the
you
first
just change
two
it,
go
kick
Are
out.
you looking at this?
Right?
We're talking about
yeah,
these?
so you're right, you're right. So I can see the first 2 here. I can step around.
There's 2 existing, that's the dark black, less than 1H, that's going to be the west. Folsom 1H, kind of.
Yeah, so the first well, was this one. So you go to your Folsom 1H right here and see that line, and that stopped there. And then the second well is the West Wing 1H, and
That's better.
yeah, so it went west, so you are right. And then these are the next 2. And so she was asking, could we come up here or whatnot, again, as Brent described, that's been vetted, and you can see all these existing wells here. This is the acreage right here that hasn't been produced or drilled yet, and that's why it's coming from this pad. It's to get those.
I apologize. I don't know. Cooperating. It's okay.
So you have to curve, because you don't want to hit the other one. The one
there's
coming
other
from there.
exploration things to try to.
And how long is this
I don't know
run?
what this to do because it
I don't even remember that. I can ask one of
Well, I think we've made it through the presentation and followed up with all the questions that everyone had from the last meeting. Go ahead.
We were gonna talk about the electric and air compression used for the site.
Okay, I think we did touch on that. Did you have additional questions that tell him what you had asked me? I thought that explanation, maybe he was able to cover what you were asking, but maybe we didn't.
So what generates the air pressure?
electricity. So we have electric air compressor in location. And it's not, I mean, it's an air compressor, but it's not off the shelf. It's got redundant air systems to it. I mean, but it is a 120 volt air compressor, right?
I'm just wondering if it's as loud as the one we have.
No.
Oh,
So it's actually,
no. These are super quiet, you don't even know they're running.
it's actually loopless. It's got yeah, so we've got, they're all screw compressors. We try to go to zero, as low maintenance as possible. So I'm still the ops guy, right? So I still want to make sure things are as low maintenance as possible.
So those run off solar power then?
Those are electric.
Those are electric.
120 volt.
Okay.
We do have some, they're called Axiom compressors that are solar. We're exploring those. So there's a whole bunch of options, but the whole reason for all these is to reduce the emissions intensity, right? And that's essentially.
So the electricity
Those are the air
goes
compressors.
off. They're not pumping air anymore, then what?
They shut down.
They have to shut it down.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
If the electricity goes out and those compressors are,
Then the site would shut down.
you have to shut it down.
Yeah.
Because the electricity goes out on a regular basis in this
There
area.
would be an alarm and the shutdown would occur remotely and then someone would have to come and check on everything to see what's going
We have
on.
tank and then we have light capacity, line distances, line sizes, to account for 24 to 48 hours of continuous. So even from a brownout standpoint, we have the ability to continue to operate
Oh.
without electricity, right? And there's other sites we're looking at, with other options, you know, solar's always something we look into. But I think we pride ourselves on the winterization that we do as well, so.
And I think one point to kind of, we all talk about the company and we're proud of the things that the company is doing. And it's ever evolving. You know, what we show you here today may not be the same thing in 6 months because we've moved on to something better, a year down the road. Probably, Brent's like, don't say 6 months, I need enough time, but you never know. So technology is always evolving and we're always looking at new technology. So we have goals that we have to meet that our parent company in Paris holds us to those accountabilities. So as technology becomes available, obviously we look at, can this help us meet those goals better?
And technology is only as good as the people that develop it, right?
Yeah, and that's, we do a lot of that, yeah, and I know what some of the other operators are using from, you know, and, we are doing what we can to continue to operate, continue to run the right way. So, you know, the systems we use, we have 257, I'm gonna be saying sitting out there, that we've been running for years. We feel very comfortable. They perform better in the winter. Because they also have electric dryers through them, minus 60-degree dew point dryers in them. We actually use them for benefits in the winter. So it's not like you're gonna get condensation in there like your pistons. We run them through a full electric dryer system to actually have super dry air. So it is ever evolving, but it's what we're trying to you know, be the pioneers of for sure.
So I have a question for all of you. Do you guys like this forum better, that we can all sit down and kind of have better dialogue than having a presentation and we just talk to it?
Mm-hmm.
Because we would like to do more of these going forward, even outside of our permitting process, so that we can start kind of doing some information sessions for the community. And we probably will follow this format.
Yes.
No, I think. so
We're
we're
running on time. Sorry, we have to be out of the room by 9 o'clock, so we're gonna have to cut it short.
My kids are with the babysitter, I will get them.
There will be another meeting between the two council meetings, and we probably will hold it in this location since it seems to work well.